Sagittarius is the 9th sign of the zodiac, and is represented by the centaur, which is half man and half horse, armed with a bow and arrow. It is ruled by Jupiter, and is a mutable sign, combined with the element of fire. Sagittarius is a super-sounding word. It literally means the archer. But it is the other part of your symbol, the horse, which illustrates a fundamental fact about your nature. You are born free. You reject the shackles of convention and tend to despise those who are bound by them.
Why be bound by convention? What is so marvellous about being Sagittarius is that one is not bound by convention.
It's just that I feel the others are missing out on so much by accepting limitations.
You are the sort of person who stands out in a crowd, and you give an immediate impression of alertness, enthusiasm, and of being eager to be involved with everybody and everything now. At best, yours is the most optimistic and the most forward-looking of all the signs, and at worst, the wildest and the most foolhardy, mentally and physically.
People always accuse me of going too far.
That's because Sagittarius represents expansion and exploration. Many of the world's greatest thinkers and greatest travellers were born under Sagittarius.
That's right, of course. Sagittarians do travel a lot. I have myself.
And when I'm forced to stay at home, I love to read books about exotic places, or accounts of journeys, you know, like the Kon-Tiki expedition and the ascent of Everest.
Because you are thinkers. You're innovators rather than inventors, and you bring your new ideas to old methods or systems. Although a positive or so-called masculine sign, Sagittarius is a strange mixture of mutability and fire. What I mean by mutable is that Sagittarians are liable to changes of mood, which no man likes to admit to.
I suppose if we don't get our way, we do get a bit moody. On the other hand, I think I'm really only moody when I'm frustrated, when I can't get on with what I want to do.
But it is the fire element in your makeup which endows you with your amazing vigour. Sagittarian women are just not passive enough for some masculine tastes.
That's something I've had to find out the hard way. There is a permanent conflict going on in me between being feminine and being myself. I just can't be as soft and pliable as the world expects me to be.
When it comes to sex, Sagittarians are very strange. Your animal instinct is strong and at times overpowering, but so also are your ideals. Problems arise when you're unable to reconcile the two. It would seem that most Sagittarians go through life rationalizing the one or the other. But what we must remember is that this is a masculine and a fire sign. The passions are fervent and the urge to do something about them powerful. And therefore this sign sits uneasily on a woman, since a man is always expected to make the first move.
But I can't conceal my feelings. That would be hypocritical.
No, but experience should teach you timing. This animal quality is not necessarily a disadvantage, as it gives you the sort of strength required to overcome personal restrictions. Two great Sagittarians, although physically handicapped, triumphed over their disabilities. It is possible that Beethoven wrote his greatest music when deaf, and Milton his greatest poetry when blind. As a Sagittarian, you are at your best in any sphere where your natural urges can be expressed, and unbearable when these are frustrated. Enterprising and active, you hate to be forced to sit still. You have real longing for wisdom and understanding. You are in your element when you can teach and convert others, and inform the rest of the world of the truths which you have discovered, whether or not the rest of the world is ready for your revelations.
St. John the Divine must have been a Sagittarian.
I'm sure he was. Sagittarians rarely let a statement pass by without some question or correction, because your curiosity and thirst for knowledge is insatiable. Your desire to enlighten us all is sometimes overwhelming.
Rule 1. Never try to silence a Sagittarian.
There is a law in astrology which is that if you really want to grasp the essence of any sign, examine its opposite. Each sign seems to contain the least attractive qualities of the sign opposing it. Now yours is Gemini, and you can be even more impractical. more unrealistic, more argumentative, and more dismissive of facts which don't comply with your theories than even the most contentious Geminian.
I suppose that's true.
What you do have in common with Gemini is exceptional mental and physical agility and an obsessive urge to communicate. But whereas the Geminian need to know and communicate is purely self-motivated, Sagittarians will use any platform to preach their humanitarian views. In an attempt to examine and understand what Sagittarius is about, it's worth compiling a list of famous Sagittarians. And the first thing you realize is that there are very few infamous ones. Perhaps their high-mindedness accounts for this. For a start, there's Socrates, the greatest teacher and the greatest pupil of the ancient world. He used conversation as a method of learning and teaching. His uncompromising attitude and defiance of public opinion, combined with his remarkable geniality, mark him out as a supreme Sagittarian.
Thomas à Becket was a worldly man who became a divine.
But of course, Mary Queen of Scots used religion for worldly ends.
They both demonstrate the Sagittarian unwillingness to be deflected from what they regard as their purpose, though the reasons behind their resolution were vastly different. Few Sagittarians are politically uninvolved. Both Sir Winston Churchill, born on the 30th of November, and Alexander Dubček, born on the 27th of November, were inspired and inspiring leaders. One grew into a benevolent elder statesman, while the other has consistently refused to recant, even when faced with public disgrace.
I don't think we want to force our opinions on other people. At the same time, though, involvement in politics is certainly one way of influencing people's minds, and I think most Sagittarians would admit that they like to do this.
You're all political ideologists at heart. Disraeli, Franco, de Gaulle, and Willy Brandt are all fellow Sagittarians. The ideals may be dissimilar, but the strength of conviction certainly not.
And we never capitulate unless we come across something which causes us to change our minds, because it broadens or alters our views.
And of course, this bears out the astrological interpretation of your sign. As there are 12 signs of the zodiac, so there are 12 houses of the horoscope. Each one symbolizes a stage in human development, and Sagittarius, being the 9th, represents travel, the development of human mind beyond immediate necessities, and the search for the key to life through knowledge.
Must be why we're always asking questions.
And why, in the final analysis, we never really accept an answer and think that we can find a better one ourselves.
Sagittarius is supposed to be the sign of the sage and also of the dreamer and the prophet. Nostradamus was one of the most famous astrologers of all time. He lived in a remote part of France during the Middle Ages and was born on the 14th of December. He not only foresaw many events in his own lifetime, but also made such staggering predictions as the French Revolution, the rise of Hitler and the Second World War, the growth of conflict between Russia and China, and the emergence of 3 important brothers in America.
Did he really forecast the rise of the Kennedys? I hadn't realized that.
Well, in fact, he did. While not all of you have outstanding gifts of prophecy, nor the intuition of the gypsy on the end of the pier, you are able to sense the cause of trouble or pain in others, and recognize suppressed love, guilt, and fear in the faces and moods and movements of others.
All right then, rule 3. Never think that a Sagittarian won't know what's on your mind.
Nor think that you can deceive us, because although we can't lie ourselves, we always know when someone else is lying.
As far as relatives are concerned, Sagittarians will forsake the security of family life in order to implement their ideals. From childhood on, you are rebels, and tend to remain rebels all your life.
It's true we don't put the family first. We're born free in a sense. It isn't that we don't love our family, we just don't feel overly committed to them. It's the idea that there are bigger things to get on with.
I suppose we're rebels with a cause.
Well, that's a Sagittarian way of putting it. You do in fact become marvellously mellow with age. You never lose your spirit, nor your sense of devilment. Your abilities and your reasoning improve as you grow older. What better example could there be than Pope John, born on the 25th of November? Although in astrology Sagittarius has always been associated with religion, very few Sagittarians have what is called blind faith. It is only after you have reconciled your humanitarian principles with a belief that you become a disciple, and consequently, today you are far more likely to give support to such organizations as the United Nations, Oxfam, or Shelter. Obviously, in your quest for knowledge, you must have come across someone who seems to personify what you think a human being should be.
Mark Twain embodies for me your description of a Sagittarian. Amongst other things, he had a great sense of humour, a sense of devilment. Do you remember when he was on an assignment in Europe? The press in the States reported him as having died. In fact, of course, he was alive and kicking. So he cabled back to them saying, "The report of my death is an exaggeration."
And do you know about Margaret Mead, the American anthropologist? She is just the sort of woman I respect. Firstly, her research among the people of the South Pacific Islands brought a completely fresh approach to our understanding of human behaviour. And secondly, she is one of the few people who look the generation gap squarely in the face instead of explaining it away. Her unique perception and accurate observations have led her to the conclusion that the present generation gap is an international phenomenon which reflects worldwide changes.
And wouldn't you know, they are both Sagittarians. Mark Twain was born on the 30th of November and Dr. Margaret Mead on the 16th of December. No Sagittarian will accept without argument a list of vices, so there's no point in reeling them off to you. What is indisputable is that your vices are no more and no less than your virtues gone mad. For instance, your energy can lead to restlessness. Your high ideals can lead to intolerance and an unwillingness to face facts. Your joviality can lead to boisterousness, particularly in a man. You're either generous to the point of extravagance or tight to a point of meanness. And there's another kind of tightness which is associated with your sign, and that's your fondness for alcohol.
We may drink to give life a bit more of a glow, but you can't say that we drink to drown our sorrows.
And many of your sorrows are associated with love. A Sagittarian in love is almost impossible to understand, for although passionate, you have a compelling need to be free. Your friendships, too, are fraught with difficulty. Your inability to accept faults in other people spoils many relationships before they start. No one person could ever provide all you demand from a friend, and you are unwilling to accept friendship unless it is complete. Although you find it hard to make close friends, your humour, understanding, and talkativeness make you a popular companion.
Well, Jupiter is our ruler.
You are no respecter of persons unless they prove their worth. You would chat up a dustman or a duchess with equal enjoyment. And then there's your candour, sincerity and honesty. You are the most genuine of people, but you're probably unaware of just how tactless and wounding your arrows of truth can be. For instance, let's hear what you think about the other signs of the zodiac.
Well, Arians think they're the centre of the universe.
What's more, they can be rather aggressive, but they're great doers, aren't they?
Taurians have a sort of basicness that I like.
But they always wait for someone else to pick up the bill.
I wish that Geminians cared about the things that mattered.
They can be great fun, clever with words, too.
I'd say too clever by half. I've always found that Cancerians are soft and emotional.
And yet very possessive where other people are concerned. I find that Virgons can't really see the wood for the trees.
But they've got such marvellous analytical minds and a real need to help other people.
Librans are so even-tempered and fair. They can see every side of a question.
But they just can't take decisions. Now, Scorpios fascinate me because they're so dangerous.
They terrify me.
I just don't understand Capricornians. They're so boring.
Well, you may say that. On the other hand, someone of the zodiac has got to have some sanity. If I weren't a Sagittarian, I'd choose to be an Aquarian, because they do care about people.
So would I. I think we share the same sort of ideals. But I suspect that they're ruthless underneath. Pisceans are so gentle and unmaterialistic. They're off in a beautiful world of their own.
True, but sometimes I want to shake them. I just wish they were a little more positive.
Well, you've been honest. And I suppose you've been as fair as you can be. But what about Sagittarians?
Well, I sometimes wish I didn't lose my temper so quickly.
I wish I could train myself to be a little more selective. I know I tend to take on far too much.
Rule 4. Don't expect a Sagittarian to say what you want to hear. Now, the movements of the major planets and how they will affect you and your life in 1971. Well, after the 14th of January, you will have the best planetary influences you could possibly wish for, because your ruler, Jupiter, will be in your birth sign for most of this year, and except for a period between the 5th of June and the 12th of September, there should be no holding you. Jupiter is the planet of opportunity, development, optimism, and cheerfulness. And if you're looking for a year in which to expand your knowledge of the world, to achieve success, or to make a fresh start, this is it. It has been 12 years or so since you received the full benefit of Jupiter, and its return invariably coincides with a period in your life when you want to branch out or take your ideas and hopes a stage further. For you who are old enough to remember, think back to 12 years ago, and you'll probably find that a similar phase occurred in your life at that time. I can't overstress how marvelous it is for you to have Jupiter back in your own birth sign, particularly since you are a Sagittarian. This should bring out all the very best of your qualities, which, as we've said, are fairly sensational. Another great planet will also be in the early degrees of Sagittarius during 1971, and this is Neptune. Its influence will be felt strongly by those of you born between the 23rd of November and the 1st of December, but by all of you in some way. Neptune is a strange, mystical, and slightly confusing planet, and some amount of caution will be needed if you are to avoid losing your sense of purpose and direction. In astrology, Neptune is associated with the sign of Pisces and the 12th house of the horoscope. And from the time of its discovery in 1846, much has happened to convince us that it implies veiled strength, behind-the-scenes activities, and intangibles. On a more personal level, it is concerned with the non-material. It heightens artistic abilities, mysterious glamour appeal, and spiritual thought. Certainly, it will increase your intuitive powers to what could be an alarming degree, but it may also confuse your reasoning. Perhaps being a Sagittarian, you can cope with Neptune, and that's saying a great deal. Your idealism, coupled with perception, could produce some startling results and discoveries. You may, however, have to guard against becoming hypersensitive and careless. You will have incredible flashes of insight and brilliant ideas, and this, coupled with the influence of Jupiter, may take you out of touch with reality. But as long as you can keep those 4 Sagittarian animal feet on the ground, you should be able to achieve your objectives. Now to Saturn. For the past 2 years or so, Saturn, the great undoer, has been slowly passing through the sign of Taurus, and it's fairly safe to say that you haven't exactly experienced complete fulfillment in your work or even much recognition for your efforts. Saturn, as we have said, is the great undoer, but he is also the great builder. He only destroys what is superficial, obsolete, and unproductive, and then only to make way for something more worthwhile. It is a very depressing influence to work through. But as he only returns to the same place every 30-odd years, once you have experienced his gloomy transit, that area of your life should definitely improve. Because Taurus is also your house of health, it is doubtful that you will have been able to summon up that customary Sagittarian energy and resilience. You loathe being unwell. To have your movements restricted can have the most serious effect on your mental health, which would explain why you have experienced such an unusual amount of depression and pessimism. Saturn moves out of Taurus on June 19th, and although you will have other problems to face, at least you will have the strength and the energy you need to cope with them. Let's talk about those other problems. Serious ones in marriages and partnerships are likely to develop in the second half of the year, and your need to expand and widen your horizons may in part be responsible for your difficulties. Try to understand your partner's point of view, no matter how irritating it may be to spend the precious time which you would prefer to devote to self-expression. Acceptance of the rigid rule, yours, that it is a partnership in the full meaning of the word, could preserve and perhaps enhance your marriage. Here again, it will be mainly those who are born within the first 10 days of Sagittarius who are likely to encounter the most serious matrimonial difficulties. Single Sagittarians will find themselves having to accept irksome responsibilities in personal relationships, and may decide, in the nick of time, that it isn't all on, it's all off. Which leads us to the planet Uranus. In Libra, your house of friends. The words one associates with this planet are unconventional, unusual, inventive, outspoken, eccentric, fascinating, and reformative. And now, because of its influence, this is probably how you like your friends to be. Uranian traits have something in common with the sign of Aquarius, and you are drawn to people who have Aquarian ideals. This is supposed to be the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and all the humanitarian love and reform that involves. You may, of course, be tempted to go too far and confuse and upset your older or more conservative associates. But if anyone is going to be involved with revolutionary people, it is a Sagittarian. Uranus in Libra opposes your house of love affairs. Any opposition causes conflicts, but with Uranus it is impossible to predict just when the arguments and separations will be. There are 2 periods in 1971, around the time of the 2 full moons, on the 10th of February and the 6th of August, when family problems will come to a head, and it will be difficult to know how to cope. we said that Sagittarians cannot be dominated by their relatives, but necessity will demand that you are drawn into their affairs. As you have so much going for you this year, you might just consider breaking some of your Sagittarian rules and combine idealism with compassion when dealing with formally uncooperative members of your family.
We've told you what we think of the other signs of the zodiac. I wonder what they think about us.
It's hardly likely that all the other signs like Sagittarians, but I've always heard that we're supposed to get on with the other two fire signs.
Supposed is the operative word. The first one is Aries, and because it's ruled by Mars, the fire element manifests itself most aggressively. Your urge to tell them about their overweening ego would hardly endear you to them, nor their assertiveness endear them to you. You have much more in common with Leo, provided it's a Leo of the opposite sex. Although at times they're over-emphatic in their views, you are at least a fair match, and perhaps a neck ahead when it comes to reasoning things out. Now to the earth signs. Firstly, Taurus. As we've said, Taurus is your house of work, and you're going to have to work hard to comprehend their obsession with the materialistic. It is perhaps the most stubborn of all the signs. They'll stay the course longer than you, but can only win if you lose interest.
Which we're not very likely to do.
And Virgo. Now, Sagittarians have a funny thing about Virgoans. They respect their logic and analytical ability, but at the same time they regret their lack of bigness. It makes for an interesting relationship. A point to remember is that yours is a fire sign, and in dealing with others, you should come to terms with your own impetuosity. The last earth sign is Capricorn.
I just can't fathom them out.
As you get older, you'll understand them better, and you'll discover that they are neither as dour nor as boring as your first impressions would lead you to believe. And so on to the air signs. Firstly, Gemini, your opposition sign. And all that can be said about them is that they are all the things that you are not, and conversely, you are none of the things that they are. Opposites sometimes do attract, but in such a case, give and take is not only advisable, it is essential. Libra is your house of friends, and they will be your friends if only you don't expect undivided affection, particularly now, because with Uranus in their birth sign, there's no knowing what they'll do next. Aquarius, the sign you respect most, and I think rightly so, for a combination of Sagittarius and Aquarius is not only stunning, it's a real knockout. And finally, the water signs. To begin with, there's Cancer. There is no real affinity here. They are neither sufficiently forward-looking nor enough of a challenge for you. And you don't really comprehend their emotions. And now Scorpio. This could be a devastating relationship.
Ah, but who would devastate who?
Scorpio is your house of secrets, and also the house of your own undoing. Need I say more? And last of all, Pisces, which rules your home. It is the intangible nature of this sign which corresponds with your ambivalent attitude to your home. Remembering that you're a born traveller, provided you're prepared to go a long way, this is where the perfection you seek could be.
You've said that I'm going to have two very different planets in my birth sign in 1971, the one stimulating and the other confusing me. It sounds almost as though my life will never be the same again. Is this so?
Yes, definitely.
I agree with you completely that Sagittarians need freedom above all else. But if you tell us how we should behave in 1971 in order to cope with the planetary changes, are we left with free will?
Yes. The movements of the planets only indicate, they don't demand. For instance, Neptune in your birth sign can inspire you and make you more creative, or alternatively, turn you into an utterly self-indulgent dreamer.
You haven't discussed Sagittarians and the arts. Are Sagittarians gifted artistically?
You develop what talents you have to the utmost. This is evident in such people as Beethoven, Toulouse-Lautrec, Sibelius, and William Blake, and more recently in Sir Noel Coward, Maria Callas, Frank Sinatra, and Sammy Davis Jr., and in literature, Jane Austen, Joseph Conrad, Dean Swift, and John Osborne all exemplify the Sagittarian urge and ability to communicate.
Will the big changes that are in store for me in 1971 involve travel?
There's a problem here, because both of your houses of travel are afflicted by the eclipses of the moon, the first on the 10th of February, and then on the 6th of August, and it's doubtful that any of your travel plans will materialize. But no astrologer could or should try to predict on eclipses. I have said that Sagittarians are born free, and perhaps herein lies the key to the true Sagittarian. Because before one can become a sage, a counsellor, or an elder statesman, one has to travel, to experience, and to make mistakes. The desire, the will, and the ability to go on learning even after you've become a teacher are the qualities which enable you to lead the most fulfilled of lives.